Hey, so this is more low-tech technology. This is something I would do in class if I was actually teaching you in person. So I thought I would shoot a quick video of it. I'm on the underground campus at George Fox, and this is a dot cam. It means it's taking a picture of anything that I put in front of it, and then I can write on that picture and you can see it. So this is the map, and it's one of the gimmicks I use for verbs to help us remember them. It's a technique called mental mapping, so it's nice that it's an actual map in this case. You can see it in popular version of like The Mentalist on TV. He uses this as a way to memorize things. The idea is that by putting things in a well-known configuration, so in this case we're going to use the Route 66. If you put things in different spots along the Route 66, you're going to be able to remember where something is located along the route, and that's going to help you remember the more abstract concept that stands behind the Greek that we're actually looking at. So in this case you have 7 different blanks, but yet you notice that the numbers are 6, 6, 6. We have 6 principal parts. So far you've only learned the first one, and so it actually goes up here in the state of Illinois. That's where we're going to start. We're going to start at the top of our Route 66 map and then work our way down. So far what you know are the present verbs. In Chapter 2 you learned the present active indicative verbs. And then in your last lesson, Lesson 9, you learned present middle passive indicative verbs. These ones you just have to learn. There's no way around it. You just have to memorize them. They're kind of your base. So if we look at this word that I like, pistuo, there's the stem, and then it just gets added these endings, or it gets added the middle passive endings. Pistuo, I believe. Based on this same stem, though, you get the verbs that are in chapters 10 and 11 of your Croy textbook. Those are the imperfect, active, indicative, and imperfect, middle, passive, indicative. So it's the same idea, but now you just have the imperfects. I'll talk about what that means in just a second. Basically, they're a past tense of verb forms. They're all, though, stuck in the state of Illinois because they're all built on the same stem. You still take this stem to create either the present or the imperfect. Let's see what that would look like. So if you grab your other chart, it looks like this, Greek verb tenses. This is part of my campaign. When I was learning Greek, I was just taught every single verb chart on its own. We memorized each of them separately. I've since realized that memorization is maybe not the best thing. Since we're only translating from Greek back to English, the key skill is recognizing. So to recognize, what you need to do is acknowledge that there are key characteristics and recognize those characteristics. So let's look at the verbs you already know. Present, active, indicative. I like to use pistuo. Your Croy textbook uses luo, which is very common. Luo means to destroy. Pistuo means I believe. I prefer to think about believing rather than destroying. But both of them are consistent verbs. Neither of them change in any weird forms. They're both regular verbs, and so that's why we'd use something like this. Here's the forms that you just have to know. Pistuo, pistues, pistue, pistuamen, pistuete, pistuusi. And see how I've got the stem here underlined? Pisteu, and then you just add each of these endings to it. If you did it with the verb luo, then you take lu as the stem and then add to it ace, a, amen. Maybe you've heard me sing this little song. Luo, lues, lue, lu, amen, luete, lu-u-u-u-si. It's a good way to remember your present verbs. Those you just have to learn. They don't have any defining characteristics, so here you'd actually put none. There's nothing defining about them, you just have to know them. They're the present tense ones. Pistuo means I believe. But if you know that, then it's going to make all the other verbs easier because all of them have characteristics that you can recognize. The imperfect active indicative has 2 characteristics that are key, and once you begin to recognize them, you don't necessarily need to memorize the chart, you can just know what they are. The first characteristic is that it has an epsilon augment. So at the beginning, you put an epsilon. So we take the same stem, pistuo, pistu. So let me put it down here. Pisteu. And if we put an epsilon augment in front of it, like this, an epsilon augment at the front, then what you now have is a past tense verb. Past tense verbs have this augment in the beginning. Epistu, and then you'd add the secondary endings. That's this other characteristic. Secondary endings. And you can see right here, here it is. It's pistu. It's the same stem. It's got an epsilon augment right here, e, and then it's got that secondary ending on. This means I was believing. Hold on to this chart. This may not make too much sense right at this moment, but I am convinced that this is a good way to learn, because then what we're going to do is we're going to add to it, and we'll think about future characteristic is a sigma. The characteristic of aorist is going to be a sigma and an alpha. I mean, they're going to be, as we just begin to recognize them, it's a lot easier to recognize the key characteristics than to try to memorize everything new every time. Okay, I hope that this helps. Try it out. If it doesn't help, then you can toss it aside. I'm not mandating you do it, but I use it in a lot of my classes, and I found it really helpful.